All right, the Georgia Bulldogs almost lost to Georgia Tech tonight, but in 7 overtimes, they climbed their way back into this game. 44-42 final score, so much to unpack. I'm going to crush this team later in the video because there's no reason why they should ever lose to Georgia Tech. There's so many resources here. They will always be more talented. They are supposed to have the best coach in college football, even though they kind of got out-coached in this game. But they didn't lose. I thought they were dead. They were down 17-0. It was ugly, ugly football for about 2.5 quarters. They were down 27-13 with less than 6 minutes left to play. They were dead. This team was dead. Everyone thought so. I mean, it was quiet in the stadium. But Carson Beck led this Georgia offense back. They scored 5 straight touchdowns, from the mid-third quarter on. Fought their way back, tied this game. He was 28-43, 297 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. The offense was abysmal for the first 2.5 quarters of this game. They were down, again, 17-0 at halftime. Nothing was going right. They were dropping balls left and right, which is still a major issue for these receivers. I know Dom Lovett had 2 big touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Dylan Bell had a big touchdown. Maybe it was a 2-point conversion in overtime. They're still dropping way too many passes, especially Arian Smith, who had, I think, 2 catches, 5 or 6 drop passes. That's what it felt like. I think it was only 2 or 3. But let's talk about the win, because this team fought and they battled back. They won the game. That's all that matters. It's on to the SEC championship, but once again, this team got off to a really tough start, really slow start. Georgia Tech came out and they played like they wanted to win the game, and they played harder. They were more physical. They were the better coach team for most of this game. Georgia kind of stole this one. They earned it, but man, they looked dead. They weren't. This team knows how to battle back. If there's one thing we've learned from this team, even against Alabama, they were down 28-0, came back and took the lead. They didn't win the game. You cannot count these guys out. And I hand up, I did. I thought they were going to lose this football game when they went down 2 touchdowns. It was 27-13, and Georgia had to score 2 touchdowns while getting a big stop. I didn't think they were going to do it. They did. They proved me wrong, and they won a wild game. I think, 7, 8 touchdowns. This was a well over 4-hour football game. Once again, the Dogs have to entertain the rest of college football, again, there's no reason they should have been in that position. There's no reason they should ever go down 17-0 against their in-state rival, who will never have the players that they do. They fought hard. They battled. And, man, Haynes King was a gladiator. That dude was a warrior. He was a beat-up quarterback, and he played his butt off against Georgia today. Time of possession went Georgia Tech's way for a while. Georgia just couldn't get stops, and Tech was moving the football, keeping the chains moving, and Georgia wasn't moving the ball much on offense, and it was only making things worse for the defense. So the defense was out there way too much, and they were tired. They got real tired towards the end and in overtime, and you could just tell. And Nate Frazier, game-winning touchdown run, and you could feel it. I remember thinking right before that play, I said, you just got to run it. I mean, you've got Tech on their heels. They are tired. They want this game to be over with. They've got nothing left. And it felt like Georgia's defense almost had nothing left too, but they fought and they made the key stops. And Georgia said, you know what? We're going to give it to Nate Frazier. We're going to run this bad boy. And they powered it in, and they won the game. So, just a kind of heroic effort from Carson Beck, who did everything he could in this game. 3rd really nice game in a row for Carson Beck, who, they don't win this game without him. Again, Dom Lovett came up big down the stretch. Cass Jones came up big down the stretch. Oscar Delp had another touchdown. Nate Frazier came up big. This is a beat-up football team, and they just battled, and you have to give them credit for it. And again, it looked like they were going to lose the game. They were not tackling well. They were not playing sound gap assignment. They were letting, Tech rushed for almost 300 yards. Now, hold on. Let's take a look at this. Georgia Tech ran for 303 yards, 2 touchdowns. Haynes King with 26 for 36, 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. They played really well, and it was going to take their very best effort to beat Georgia out here, and they almost got it done. You've got to give them a lot of credit, because in a way, you can make the case they outplayed Georgia. They didn't really, because they lost the game, and Georgia came up big, in overtime and in the second and the third. but it felt like this game was never going to end. But Georgia came up big, and that's what champions do. And this team still has a chance to win a national championship. And if they do go on to win the SEC and win the whole thing, you can look back at this game as a game where they had to fight through more adversity and come together as a team and win in a game that at one point I don't think anyone watching this video thought Georgia was going to win, because it did look extremely bleak, especially when you're down 14, less than 6 minutes to go. The defense is having trouble getting a stop. The offense is finally starting to wake up a little bit, but it looked almost a little too late, right? But they didn't. They fought back, and they made the plays down the stretch in regulation, and they made just enough plays in overtime. This is their 7th win over Georgia Tech. This came close to being one of the worst losses we've seen from this team and this program in a long time. And listen, Georgia Tech is getting better. They've got a good coach who knows what he's doing. They're bringing in talent. They've got a really nice recruiting class. They're going to battle Georgia, but there's no excuse for losing to this team. There's just not. Georgia has way too much of an advantage as it relates to resources and NIL and the talent that they bring in on a consistent basis, and the coaching and everything they have around them. There's no reason to lose to Georgia Tech. They almost lost to them today, and it would have been just catastrophic. They still have, a chance to win the SEC, even if they lost this game, but they needed to show that they could battle back. And what a way to keep your home winning streak alive. I mean, that would have been a tough way to end the losing streak, but it's inexcusable to have 0 points in the first half. Things were looking ugly. I mean, Carson Beck was not on the right page with his receivers. They couldn't get any push up front. Not a whole lot of, holes to run through. Nothing came easy. But man, they scored their first touchdown midway through the third quarter, and then they scored a touchdown on their next 4 drives. I mean, they turned it on when it mattered most. Oscar Dell 2-yard touchdown throw that got him on the board. Nate Frazier 1-yard touchdown run. Dominic Lovett 17-yard catch. Dominic Lovett 3-yard touchdown catch. London Humphreys 14-yard reception for a touchdown. Cash Jones with a touchdown right down here in overtime. Dylan Bell with a 2-point conversion in overtime, and then Nate Frazier runs it in from 3 yards away, 2 yards away. It's late. Losing my mind a little bit, but what a massive win that Georgia. They didn't need, but they kind of did. But this team still has some major holes. They're not tackling well. We got a lot of go dogs still going on here. I mean, listen, as bad as it looked, if you're a Georgia fan, watch this. You got to be excited. You got to be happy. It's a win over Georgia Tech. It was an ugly one, but it was a massive 17-point come from behind victory. They were down 17 at one point, down 14 late. They clawed their way back to win against arguably their biggest rival. I don't think it's their biggest rival, but if you're an older Georgia fan, beating Georgia Tech means more than beating Florida, and that might sound crazy to sound, but you can't lose to these guys. Losing to these guys gets you fired, and Kirby Smart's not going anywhere. I'm not saying anyone should be fired, but you lose to these guys enough, and that's what happens. But the Dogs proved that they were the better team, and they made more plays down the stretch when it mattered most. It was ugly, but boy, my heart's still racing. I'm still trying to put together what happened in this game. We're going to talk more about it, but an all-time Georgia Tech game. It shouldn't have been. I thought Georgia would win comfortably. I picked Tech to cover because I thought this would be a little bit of a closer game. I knew Georgia Tech would come out fighting. This was their Super Bowl. They gave it everything they had. Haynes King, so much credit, so much respect to that guy. I mean, he did everything he could. He is beat up, bruised up, but he gave a hell of an effort and almost led Georgia Tech to one of their biggest wins ever, program history. That's what it would have been. And Georgia said, no, this is our house. You're not coming in here and beating us. We don't care how many overtimes it takes. We're going to win this game. And that's what they did. So what looked like one of the biggest upsets in this rivalry, one of the biggest Georgia Tech wins ever, especially against Georgia, turned around to be a gut-wrenching, heartbreaking loss for Georgia Tech and an epic come-from-behind win. And listen, the game's over, and they've got a lot of work to do. Offensively, they've got to do it for 4 quarters. You can't just take half the game off and then turn it on late when you have to. But when they needed to make big plays, both on offense and on defense and on the headset, they got it done. barely, but they got it done. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around this. Small Munden, 13 tackles. CJ Allen, 10 tackles. Danny Jackson with a big forced fumble, or fumble recovery. I think Chaz Chambliss fell on it. That's when you really started to feel like, okay, this is gonna trend Georgia's way. Georgia might win this game. That's exactly what they needed. Again, they were down 14, less than 6 minutes left. They go and they score a much needed touchdown to get them to Dominic Lovett. They get the turnover, much needed, and they come back and score another touchdown. Boom, tie game. They have a big stop defensively. We're going to overtime, and then that's what happened. You saw how it transpired, but Georgia ran for over 100 yards, 108, one touchdown, 4.2 yards to carry. That's got to get better. They've got to clean up the drops. That might end this team's season at some point down the road. They've got, if they can, I mean, is it possible to get better, or is this what they are? I mean, some of these guys just are too inconsistent. I don't, that might probably be true at this point. You can't expect Arian Smith to catch 50% of the passes, because I mean that's about what you're getting from him. That's what you got from him today. 50% drops, 50% catches. I'm not trying to crush the kid, but he's got to play better. Daniel Harris at cornerback's got to play better, but they stepped up when they needed to. Again, massive win, an all-timer. Georgia almost had a brutal loss, but they didn't. They fought back and they won. Massive game. It's past midnight. We got a long night ahead of us, but crazy, wild win for the Dogs. Let me know. I'm sure I'm forgetting so many crazy aspects of this game because it was so wild. There were so many big plays and big moments. So let me know in the comments section all that I just forgot, because I'm sure there's a lot. But what did you think about this game? A lot to like, a lot to not like, though. It was very ugly, but then very, very good. Too much Jekyll and Hyde. They've got to get it together and play consistent football for 4 quarters on both sides of the ball if they're going to win a national championship. Right now, they're scraping their way there. They're getting these gutty wins. We'll see if they can come out with some more fire and energy in Mercedes-Benz against Texas or Texas A&M. We'll see, but what a massive win for the Dogs. 44-42 and like 6, 7, 8 overtimes. I think it was just 7, but wow. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the website.